What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. We are rolling right along in our ranking series, wrapping up the offense. It's Friday, July 3rd. We're going to talk tight ends with Cody Benjamin. Make sure to check out all of the different shows in the feed. You can also check out us on YouTube. Subscribe. If you like the show in any form or fashion, you want to support us, please subscribe on YouTube. If we get our follower count up, I'm told something fun will happen. I don't know. Just go subscribe. Well, you want to get an alert. Nothing will happen. You just subscribe. I got a new shirt. I had stopped wearing this yellow shirt that you've seen me on YouTube for 4 straight days because we record these in chunks, as far as you know. Cody Benjamin, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm not going to comment on your shirt, but I am going to comment on your beard. I don't know how many people tell you that it's looking good, but I personally cannot grow a beard, and so I salute you for that. You know what?
I made the decision. You hit a critical juncture of the summer when I go to the beach with my in-laws for a week, and it's, do I shave or do I not shave? Because if I don't shave, I'm going to have this stupid beard tan, but I don't really feel like getting in shape, and the beard allows me to have a second chin without anyone noticing. And it's thick enough that it covers it all up. So thank you. I appreciate it. I like the beard.
Yeah. So will you ever consider taking it down?
It doesn't really go down. It's my hair doesn't grow long. My hair just grows into a giant mushroom, and my beard does the same thing. It doesn't grow. It would take forever to get it down to my chin. It would just be this thick, gnarly neck beard.
Okay. All right. So, however, it's working right now. So.
Thank you. I trim it every couple of weeks when my wife starts complaining about it. She's like, I don't know. It got a little grungy while we were down at the beach, and so I try to trim it up just to keep the wife off my back. But if I can make it through June in North Carolina with this thing going, please. I mean, it'll be here through the rest of the year.
Maybe someday you throw some dye in there.
Ooh, maybe so.
Like an all blonde.
Or I thought that you were going to accuse me of dyeing my beard now. Maybe I like a little salt and pepper, but I'll roll with the dark brown for right now. Let's get to some tight ends. We'll start. Tight end is a fun group, and you got thrown a bone because Rob Gronkowski de-tired, and we'll get to him in a minute. But first, on the bottom end of this list, actually, I'll ask you first because John Breach got a lot of heat for his kicker rankings. Patrick Walker got a lot of heat for his running back rankings. How much? And you know what? Before we do that, Sean Wagner McGuff did coach rankings, and you seemed #big mad about him on Twitter. Would you care to comment?
I was actually wondering if you'd bring this up. Now, I would encourage Sean. I think we should get Sean and I on the same. I don't want to say anything that I wouldn't say.
You can say whatever you want about Sean. You can thrash him on the spot.
Well, to be honest, I just think he decided
the beef, by the way, and we discussed this with Debo on. Debo, did we talk about this at some point in the last 24 hours? Maybe this morning?
We talked briefly with Patrick Walker about this.
Yeah. Okay. Doug Peterson, Sean McVay over Doug Peterson was your bone of contention.
Yeah, I just think there's no argument. I think there's a sizable. Now, I mean, can you make the case that they're close? Yes, I think that's fine. But I think to rank him several spots ahead of Doug Peterson is just it's just ignoring what reality is. And I think that I felt like because I've been on the Pick Six podcast once before, at least, that I had the ability to respond to Sean's rankings. And but so I think that, Sean McVay, he pulled out the winning percentage as this chief barometer of what a coach should be judged by. And if that's the case, then Mike McCarthy should be on there because
Pete Prisco made the same point.
He is, I believe he's above all but maybe 4 or 5 of them. And so, yes, Sean McVay has had success. There's no doubt. But I think that my point was I think a lot of Rams fans would have rather had Sean McVay coach half as smartly or as aggressively as Doug Peterson did when it really mattered. And I think, Doug Peterson has beat Sean McVay's Rams twice on the road in the late season without Carson Wentz. I think he didn't choke in the Super Bowl. Matter of fact, he did the quite opposite and showed up Bill Belichick rather than kind of cower in his shadow. Mm-hmm. And I think that I just think, Sean McVay gets a lot of – he won Coach of the Year. He's gotten a lot of hype as being this smart, aggressive guy, and he is.
But he's secretly kind of conservative. He's not that aggressive. Doug Peterson is way more aggressive on fourth down and 2-point conversions and all that sort of stuff than Sean McVay is.
And I realize that, Sean isn't ranking most aggressive coaches, but I think that's a factor. And I think that Doug Peterson is a lot of what Sean McVay gets credit for being. And Sean continuously pointed out that he has a better winning percentage. But Doug Peterson has a better winning percentage in the playoffs. I mean, he's been.
Doug Peterson also has a Super Bowl.
He won
the Super Bowl with the Eagles and Nick Foles.
And so Sean would come back at me and say, "Well, I guess you're putting a little more weight on those games than I do." And I say, "Yes, I am, because they are the playoffs, and that's the Super Bowl."
I'm weighting the Super Bowl more than a regular season victory over the Arizona Cardinals, Sean. That is what I'm doing.
Yeah, and so, again, I mean, I welcome a conversation with Sean. I mean, we've had one. And then he pulled out this, tweeting all day long about how, the Eagles fans are disrespectful. And I just thought, you tweeted an opinion about coaches. Eagles fans are giving you their opinion. And then he pulls out the 50-year-old Santa Claus thing. I mean,
he did Santa Claus?
Well, he said somebody can pull it. So, this cliche national media shot at Eagles fans, and I thought, come on, Sean.
Yeah,
we
that's
can do better.
That's weak.
So
I hope that you're dominating of him on this podcast that gets him suspended or fired or something like that.
My gosh! Well, I don't know if I go that far.
I don't really want that to happen. And by the way, Doug Peterson, 7-9 his first year, 13-3, 9-7, 9-7 cents, and remember the Eagles went 9-7 with Greg Ward catching passes.
That's the thing. You have to remember the circumstance. I mean, it's not enough just to look at the wins and losses. I mean, look at. I mean, the year they went 13-3. I mean, how many players they lost? The last 2 years, he drugged them to the playoffs when halfway through the year we're all saying there's no shot. I mean, this isn't the Super Bowl team, and yet they're back in the playoffs. They're, if Carson Wentz doesn't get hurt this past year, maybe they advance. I just think, if you look at the complete body of work, which is what he said he used, I think you see that Doug Peterson is ahead there.
But I think that Sean McVay's two best teams in 17 and 18 are better than the two best Eagles teams, but that Doug Peterson has. But Doug Peterson has the best team. And I think if we're talking about 2020 too, I would rather gamble on Doug Peterson to win his division than Sean McVay.
And which seasons were you referencing where the Rams would be better?
17 and 18, but the Eagles won the Super Bowl in the year. Yeah,
and both those years, that Eagles team and that Rams team played each other in Los Angeles with playoff implications, and we know who won. Now you started this by talking about.
Oh, that's the podcast. Thanks, everybody. No.
Well, you started this by talking about it, and actually, it's funny because I saw all these players coming at other people for their rankings. I got nothing for the tight ends, so I thought I need to work harder to make people upset.
Really?
Turns out Sean got me upset enough, I guess, with the coach rankings. But
right, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to do. I was trying to figure out what kind of heat you got. It turns out probably not much. It's a good list. Let's talk about the bottom five. Hunter Henry at 10. And is this for 2020? Are you basically, because I think everybody had sort of different criteria. Are you basing it what you want from somebody for 2020? Was it sort of body of work, et cetera, et cetera? What'd you go with?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, I guess, criteria was just recent success and then also kind of projection for 2020. And so, what have they done the last few years? I mean, so what have you done for me lately, league? And I mean, for me, it was kind of like entering the 2020 season. This is kind of what, this is where I expect the rankings to be. I mean, Hunter Henry is one of those guys where, if he were healthy, he could be, I guess, anywhere on this list. I mean, he projects, when he's on the field and actually puts up the numbers, he projects as a Pro Bowl caliber tight end. It's just the injuries have plagued him. And so it's similar to a guy like Evan Ingram with the Giants, who wasn't on the list, but I was
going to ask you about him next. I was surprised he wasn't on there. I think he's a guy who could be in the top 5 next year.
Yeah. The thing with him is he's had multiple injuries. And if you look at his numbers, they've actually gone down each year he's been in the NFL. And so people talk about him as like, oh, he might be a breakout candidate. That's true. But the numbers have gone down. And so, yeah, he's definitely got a chance, but injuries.
Yeah, Evan Ingram, 115 targets, 64 catches. That's a horrible catch rate. But in his rookie year, 722 yards, and then 577, 467. It's literally like his numbers have declined every single year, which is very bizarre. I think if he or Hunter Henry got 16 games, they would be candidates to creep into the top 10 next year. Also on the bottom of the list, Tyler Higbee, bit of a surprise there at number 9.
Yeah, that comes down to really you just can't ignore what he did with Jared Goff in the last stretch of the season. I mean, to be honest, I'm not a huge Tyler Higbee fan, but I think that the amount of volume that he got at the end of the season was just undeniable. I mean, with Brandon Cooks no longer there, I would expect there to be possibly more targets for him, working over the middle. I mean, Jared Goff, Sean McVay, he needs him to be comfortable. And so he was very comfortable with Tyler Higbee down the stretch. I think that I put in the story that, I wouldn't be surprised if his ceiling is pretty close to what he ended up putting up last year, but that's still decent tight end numbers, especially in that offense.
Yeah, and you saw with Higbee too, like about midway through the season, I think it was week 9, is when they sort of changed up what they were doing on offense and started using tight ends more and more. Higbee hadn't had a game, had one game over 60%, where he played 60% of the snaps on offense before week 9. And then after that was 76, 69, 91, 97, 85, 89, 96. He was just on the field down the stretch. I mean, this is a guy who was a big time factor for Jared Goff. Had 48 catches from week 9 on to week 15, 542 of his 734 yards. So he was a non-factor for most of the season, then an absolute animal down the stretch. I think with him, it probably depends on what coaching genius Sean McVay does in terms of whether, he wants to go with the 12 personnel or whether, they think they want to have more wide receivers out there. We'll see. I think a lot probably depends on what does – Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp going to be healthy and out there? Are they going to use Josh Reynolds more? I think the development of those wide receivers will almost dictate what Higbee does. But you're right; it's hard to ignore what he did down the stretch. Nobody ignored Austin Hooper, number 8 on the list. He got paid by the Browns. It's kind of tough to slot him because I think we don't know what he's gonna. We know what he was doing in Atlanta. We don't know what he's gonna do in Cleveland, where they did give a ton of money, but they have David Njoku. They have a lot of depth at the position.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the contract and you say he's coming out of a good offense, he's going to maybe a little bit more questionable situation. That could be tough, but I think everything else points to it's okay to bet on him, and they're okay to pay him that money because he's 25. Unlike Evan Ingram, his numbers have gone up every year. I just think he's quiet. He's probably a little underrated, actually. I mean, even though he got that big deal, I think a lot of people, that's gonna, I guess, dictate people's opinions about him. But I think Baker Mayfield, I mean, it's hard. It'll be hard for them to be much worse than they were offensively under Freddie Kitchens and what happened last year. I think Kevin Stefanski, he knows, he's coming out of a Vikings offense that for years used Kyle Rudolph pretty well. I think, I just like the fit. I think the profile just fits. It's a young ascending player and a young quarterback that's looking to rebound.
Number 7, Jared Cook, not a young ascending player, but a guy that I swear to God, every offseason, it's like Jared Cook is about to really have a breakout year. Do you think, is it coming? He had 800, almost 900 yards with Oakland 2 years ago and 700 with New Orleans last year. He hadn't had a bad – he's been a good player. I just don't know if 1,000-yard season's on the horizon.
Yeah, I don't know if it's expecting a breakout as much as just looking at his track record, and it's been pretty steady. I think it's everywhere besides Green Bay that he's gone, and he's gone to a bunch of places. He's been solid. So I think at the very least you're working with a high floor there with Jared Cook, especially in that offense. That's part of the – if we're looking at their situation, it's hard to be in a better spot than you've got Michael Thomas on the outside, Alvin Kamara in the backfield, Drew Brees. He's going to get work, and I think he's shown that, he is older, but he's been pretty durable. He's just produced, and I think he's also had some of his better years in the last few seasons. So I think that he's another guy that, not spectacular, but solid.
All right. I would agree with you there. And then the guy who replaced him in Oakland, Darren Waller, a massive breakout year last year. Nobody loves a check down quite like Derek Carr. And Darren Waller is very good for checking down, or I guess 10-yard out, Derek Carr, whatever you want to call it. Darren Waller had a massive season, 90 catches on 117 targets. That's almost 80%, and 1,145 yards, just 3 touchdowns. But I mean, he was a fantasy league winner basically last year.
Yeah, I mean, those numbers alone you'd think would maybe put him higher, but obviously when it's just one season, I mean, before that he did nothing. He was a hard knocks story. And so you want to be a little bit cautious, but then again, you don't catch 90 balls by accident.
Right.
I guess if you're working with Derek Carr, I mean, that offense could change this year. I mean, they want to add speed. They want to be more creative. But you could, on the flip side, I mean, if the speed opens up more and there's spots there over the middle for him to get targets. I mean, if he doesn't replicate 1,100 yards again, that's, I think that's okay. But still, when Derek Carr is your quarterback, even if Marcus Mariota comes in, I mean, I think he's going to get targets. And the other thing, I mean, part of this is attributed to maybe the checkdowns, but he also caught, I believe it was close to 80% of his passes. And so he was a reliable receiver, not just a big splashy receiver last year as well.
And he got paid. He got paid too. Georgia Tech guy. I don't think I realized he went to Georgia Tech. Somebody don't remember that. I guess he was there when Paul Johnson was there. So it's like nobody is memorable at Georgia Tech, because they're always running like for years they ran anyway, I don't need to go off on a Paul Johnson tangent. He did win an ACC title, so that's unnecessary. Let's take a quick break. When we come back to top 5 tight ends. Okay, so at number 5, this is probably the hardest guy to slot, right? Rob Gronkowski, who retired, took a year off of football, came back, was traded to the Buccaneers, and now you just don't know exactly what you're going to get from him, but I like the slotting at 5. He has the upside to be, I guess he could still be the number 1 tight end in football. Maybe. I don't know, Cody. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, possibly. I think that I said this ranking didn't get a whole lot of backlash, but the one thing that people did point out is maybe, some people thought he was too high at 5 and some people thought he was too low. And I think that kind of speaks to the unpredictability here. I think Rob Gronkowski hasn't played a full season since 2011. He took a whole year off of football. I mean, you could look at that 2 different ways. You could say he's going to be rested up, or, I guess he's in good shape, but still a year away from football is a year away. With Tom Brady there, I mean, you're guaranteed to get a lot of targets. But again, the expectation, I think if you're expecting him to play 16 games, that's just a little bit foolish if you look at his resume. And so when he's on the field, when he's healthy, I think much in the same way that Hunter Henry, I mean, he produces, and to a greater degree than Hunter Henry. So that's why I think number 5, I mean, I think, let's say he plays 13 games, I think he should still be a top 10 tight end. It's just a matter of how many games is he going to give you and how long is that, learning curve in Tampa Bay. But you look at the receivers, I just think he's going to get plays. He's going to get red zone targets. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, they're going to take guys off of him, or he's going to draw them away from the other guys. I mean, it's a good situation for Gronk.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, to me, it almost comes down to how is Bruce Arians going to design this offense? Is he going to try to feature Gronk as a receiver a lot, or is he maybe worried that Tristan Wirfs comes in there and isn't prepared to handle the blind side out of the gate, and he decides to stick Gronk, basically have him hug the left side of that, or the right side of that offensive line, or even help out. And, you could put Gronk in there and he's a great blocker, and you can have Chris Godwin and Mike Evans running routes. You almost got Tyler Johnson they brought in, and Justin Watson, who they like, a 2018 5th-round pick. They're not loaded at wide receiver in terms of that third. They have 2 great ones, obviously, but there's not a ton of depth. So maybe – I think you're right. I think Gronk – I could see a 600-yard or 600-yard, 10-touchdown season.
Yeah,
where,
that's the thing.
Where he does a ton of the blocking, but then he's a big-time red zone target.
Yeah, I mean, he could play the extra left and right tackle spot most of the year, but he's still in the red zone. I mean, I'm sure Tom Brady's going to be looking his way, and so that's exactly what. And if he posts 600 yards, 10 touchdowns, I mean, I think you're still talking good numbers there for him.
Oh yeah, for sure. But even if he does that, I think one of then I think your ranking will check out, because you look at what Mark Andrews does. You got at number 4. And he's 852 yards and 10 touchdowns last year in a monster breakout season at the age of 23. He was Lamar Jackson's top target. I mean, like, even if – so Gronk almost has to have like a peak Gronk year to really climb back into this top I guess, to be a top 4. And look, if he was number 3 after the season, that would be surprising.
Yeah, and a peak Gronk year, you probably need, closer to 16 games than what he's given you these last few years. And so that could be asking. So, yeah, I think
plus,
that's why I guess.
Like, I mean, I'm not, sorry, I just wonder, like, you look at Gronk and the last few years, if I can find the freaking thing, I was trying to look and see what his snap count was. Why can I not find snap counts? Oh, well. Anyway, my point being is that, like, it wouldn't be surprising. So, all right, here we go. 2018, he played 75% of the snaps. 2017, when he was an all-pro, 79% of the snaps because he sits out games. He's never played more than 85% of the snaps in his career. So it wouldn't be surprising at all if the Buccaneers utilize O.J. Howard and other formations and stuff like that in order to give him, and Cameron Brate too, in order to give Gronk time off to keep him rested. This is a team that thinks it's going to the playoffs, so you don't want to play Gronk 100% of the snaps out of the gate and have him wear down too quickly. Yeah,
I think they'll be. If Bruce Arians brought him in, I think he seems like the perfect coach to come up with a game plan like that. He knows this is a win now season. You have Tom Brady. You want to. I doubt they bring Gronk in without having that kind of discussion about how are we going to – you're coming off a year out of football. You've had injuries. Let's make sure we get you in there when you need to be in there.
How do you think Mark Andrews has a path to becoming number 1 on this list, or is that just asking too much?
Well, if you like Lamar Jackson's trajectory, yeah, but it's tough. These top 4, they're all in really good quarterback offense situations. Now, I would consider Mark Andrews. The top 3, I think, are more interchangeable than Mark Andrews is, but he's certainly got the upside.
So you think there's a drop-off after the top 3 then?
Yeah, I would put the big 3 together. Ertz, Kelce, and Kittle, I think, are in just the 1A, B, C class there. And I think all 3 of those were the only 3, or all 3 of them had, I think it was at least 170 catches and 2,000 receiving yards over the last 2 years. All 3 of them had that. They were the only 3 on the list. And so I think that they're just a class above. But Mark Andrews, if he's got one thing, he's got upside. He had 10.
He only played 41% of the snaps last year for the Ravens. It's crazy.
I think he only had officially 4 starts. I'm not sure what the number was. Yeah,
I think it was 4 starts, which is – it's just wild. He's only 23. It's a ton of upside. But you're right, like – I think the problem for him is that he would need to be more full-time, like Ertz, Kelce, and Kittle to crack that, the top 2.
The good thing with him, too, is he's not just this, like Darren Waller just catching everything over the middle from dump-offs. I think over the last 2 years, he's averaged over 14 yards a catch. And so he's been a big play tight end as well. So I think he's got a lot going for him. And in that offense, where you're doing a lot of stuff in the backfield and then quick strikes over the middle. I think that I think the offense, the whole situation is good for him.
Yeah. He could look, he's probably going to get overdrafted in fantasy, and there's probably some regression coming in terms of the 10 touchdowns, and that's fine. But the dude's a monster, and he's going to be really good next year.
Let me ask you one person that people pointed out too that was missing from this list was Hayden Hurst, who obviously left Baltimore from behind Mark Andrews, kind of assuming he's just going to be that Austin Hooper. But I'm a little more skeptical. I don't know that it's going to be just that easy. And I know
I wouldn't put him on this list. That's for sure. Like, when you said somebody else, I was like, who did I forget about thinking? And Hayden Hurst was not like Hayden Hurst has upside, but he's like already 27 years old. He came out of, he came out of South Carolina, and he'll be 27 in August. He could break out for the Falcons this year, but I don't think it's automatic that he just gets all of Austin Hooper's receptions.
It's not like
Ingram the biggest snub? Who was the biggest snub? Oh, or was it Dallas Goedert?
He was in the honorable mention, but I wasn't going to put him above. So Evan Ingram, you could make a case for maybe Eric Ebron if he rebounded. What was I going to say? But yeah, Hayden Hurst, I think it's not like he didn't have an opportunity in Baltimore. Mark Andrews was the number 4 tight end 2 years ago. Hayden Hurst was a first-round draft pick. I mean, I think this wasn't a case where he didn't have the opportunity. He missed the opportunity in Baltimore. So I wouldn't just plug him in. But
the Ravens took him ahead of Lamar Jackson, actually, which is people forget about that.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I wouldn't have Hayden Hurst on the list either, though. Okay, so the big three you mentioned, Zach Ertz, George Kittle, and Travis Kelce. I would maybe, at the risk of offending you, I would maybe push back that it's a big two, and that Zach Ertz is in his own category, and that's not necessarily a dig on Ertz, who's a really, really good player. It's just sort of, I think, because of how the Eagles operated and because of how much they used Dallas Goedert, I almost think that Ertz might have dipped a little bit last year out of that top two list. I would actually, and you have Kelce, Kittle, Ertz. I think Ertz at 3 is right. I would put Kittle above Kelce myself, just because of all around blocking and everything that he does in that offense. But Kelce probably the best receiving tight end.
Yeah, I think if I were to make one change or do this again, I mean, I think Kittle and Kelce are so close. I mean, you could swap them. I mean, I can definitely make an argument to myself that George Kittle is number one. I mean, I think if you're talking about he's got 3 less seasons of wear and tear, he's younger. He operates like the number one receiver in that offense. I mean, if you think about San Francisco, their wide receivers are gadget guys. I mean, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, those are guys that, yes, they're wide receivers, but that's a run-based team. I mean, George Kittle is Jimmy Garoppolo's number one target.
Yeah,
and
sure.
He's, I think it was 2 straight years, 85 catches. I mean, over 1,000 yards. Kelce got the nod here from me just because, I mean, his floor to me is even higher than anybody. I just think he's had 4 straight years, 80 catches, over 1,000 yards. I mean, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, those are
pretty
number
ridiculous. Like, I mean, he's averaged. What is he? Let's see. What is he? I mean, what does he average for the last few years? I mean, it's like it's kind of insane. I mean, he has 80 catches and 1,000 yards in 4 straight seasons for a tight end. That is really, really strong.
And I know, I mean, he's been around longer than Kittle, and so maybe there's some some.
His average over those 4 seasons, 92 catches, 1,182 yards. That is absurd. Maybe I'm wrong on Kittle. I don't know. Kittle just to me has more upside. I think they both fit perfectly in the offenses they're in. Like Kittle would be awesome with the Chiefs, don't get me wrong, but Kelce he doesn't need to block as much in the Chiefs offense, whereas Kittle is such a good and dynamic run blocker, and they need him as sort of that fake when you start doing the play action stuff and you have him get out there and pummel dudes and then break free, and he's so good after the catch. Kelce is too, but I think Kittle is maybe better running in the open field just because he's so punishing. He's like looking for contact.
And that's maybe where the difference is, the drop-off between these two and Ertz, because I think you're talking about more of after-the-catch ability with these top 2 guys. I mean, Ertz has been steady, really steady. He's been everyone's favorite target there. I mean, going back to Nick Foles, the Chip Kelly years, I mean, ever since he took over for Brent Selleck. But I think you're right. I think the after-the-catch ability is there. Yeah, I mean, and I think you could take any of these 3. And let's say you put Ertz on the Chiefs, you put Kittle, with the Eagles. I mean, if you swapped any of these 3, I think they're all in great position. I think they're all still putting up these kind of numbers.
Yeah, and the Eagles, by the way, I think they're going to do a ton of 12 personnel this year with both Goddard and Kelce out there. Goddard and Ertz out there. And
that's another thing. I mean, Dallas Goedert was kind of like a quasi-starter last year, and Zach Ertz still caught 88 passes, and so he's a target even when he's not necessarily the only big tight end out there.
All right. I like it. This is a good list. I'm glad that you were able to escape the heat that Sean and
but then everyone
he's like, give me the heat. Where's the heat?
Well, I mean, when you're making it, you don't necessarily want that. But then, of course, you get the players on the segments, you get the attention. I mean, what's better, Will? You know that you're in the podcast world. I mean,
people talking about it is better, right? Nobody's talking about you. I also think that, like, for whatever reason, I think that the way that the tight ends shake out, where it's like, okay, we know that let's say Kittle and Kelce are at the top of your list, no matter what. Ertz is going to be close to right there, Andrews and Gronk. And then it's like, is anybody going to get like real mad that like Tyler Higbee's 9 instead of all like Evan Ingram? Like maybe Evan Ingram, but
I guess my path would have been putting Gronk at 1 or something.
Or leaving Gronk off.
Yeah. See, but that's just
Then people look, yeah. If you go Gronk 1, people would have freaked out. Or like Andrews 1.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. People don't get as mad about tight ends as they do.
Yeah.
DBs. I don't know why.
I think the list that's what I believe.
Like leaving Alvin Kamara off the running backs list, that's going to get people mad. Like, is anybody taking Leonard Fournette over Alvin Kamara? No chance.
I think I heard was it Ryan that left Von Miller off the edge rushers?
And they tagged Von Miller. They're like, hey, at Von Miller, you weren't on the edge rushers. What do you think about that? And he's like, yeah. And the Broncos tweeted it, and the Broncos were like quote tweeted. Everybody got that's what you got to do. Is you got to leave off a big name. And I don't know that there's I don't know if there's a tight end that you could like leave off without looking like you were either doing it on purpose, forgot, or you're just a total jerk fit. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
It's hard like you can't be like, I'm sorry, George Kittle's not a top 10 tight end. That's just where I stand on this. People are like, what are you talking about, bro?
Yeah. No, it is a pretty straightforward group, I think. And those bottom guys, I think they're all in a similar – I mean, Evan Ingram, Hunter Henry, those are guys that they've just got big question marks. But if they can answer those, they'll be fine.
Or maybe you just did a great job on the list and people aren't mad. Maybe that's what it is. Did a great job on the podcast. Cody Benjamin. Is it at Cody J. Benjamin or just at Cody Benjamin?
Yeah. Should I switch that? Should I try and switch it? It's my middle name.
No, I don't think you need to switch it. I just making sure I gave out the right Twitter name.
Okay.
I didn't know if it was like I know what it is, but I just want to make sure I got it right. Is Cody Benjamin available?
That's a good question. I don't know.
People to change their Twitter names in the past on this podcast, so maybe that's where Cody's looking for a little bit of advice.
Well, I mean, I tried to get Sean Wagner to drop McGuff entirely out of his name.
Well, I've noticed that sometimes. So do you choose just to get rid of that last half of the hyphen just out of saving some words? Or
yes. I call him Sean Wagner. Like I'm like, because I don't want to be like. I just don't want to call him Sean Wagner McGuff. I just don't want to do it. I think Sean Wagner is a cooler name than Sean Wagner McGuff.
Man. Well, I don't want to beat up on Sean too much on this podcast.
You all listen.
But on radio shows, I'll go on and we'll end it, and they'll say, follow him at Cody Benjamin on Twitter. And,
Cody J!
I'm not going to
Looks like Cody Benjamin is taken, but he joined April 2010, doesn't have an avatar, doesn't follow anybody, doesn't have any followers, and in fact has never tweeted.
Really?
Yeah. So I think you could probably call Twitter and be like, hey, can you give me that?
Maybe I accidentally registered that way back then.
Ooh, that could be the case.
Yeah. I'll give him a call.
And then you forgot the password.
Yeah. I don't know.
Possible. I wish I'd gotten just the username Brinson, but somebody named Art Garrity registered in September 2010, which I think was actually before I did it. Maybe I was January 2010. He got at Brinson for some particular reason. He doesn't follow anybody. He has 2 followers, which doesn't make any sense in the world. Some Lisa, who appears to be a Japanese bot, and Ken the Future, who follows me, and I assume thought he was following me when he did that. And the only time that Art Garrity has ever tweeted was September 2nd, 2010, when he tweeted Tampa, Florida. And that is the extent of his tweets. So maybe I need to get him. Maybe I need to get Brinson too.
Yeah, well, we'll work on it together.
Yeah, we'll petition Twitter and go after him. All right, follow him at Cody J. Benjamin. That was a weird. We got several weird tangents in this one. I like it. Thanks for doing it, buddy. Appreciate the time. Great list, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks for having me on.